Hi guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the Sennheiser IE ATS-BT. Now these earphones are the Bluetooth neckband variant of the IE ATS, which can be found for under £300. These however retail for anything between £430 all the way down to £320, depending on the source that you find. Links will be down in the description below in case you're interested, including alternatives that I will mention in this review. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, what you get in the box? Well, aside the box itself, you've got the earphones, which come with a silicone ear tips on them itself, and I'll get into the earphones in just a bit. Then you've got a neat little carrying case over here. As you can see, it's pretty flat and also pretty soft. And inside it you'll find manual, you'll find a set of Comply foam T600 tips, you'll find a bass adjustment tool, which I'll get into in just a bit, and a cleaning tip on the other end. Then you've got a USB to USB-C cable. As you can see, I haven't even opened that. And you've got extra silicone tips depending on the size, and also including dual flang tips as well, which is great because tips are really important to get the right seal and the best comfort. So in terms of the earphones themselves, it's pretty simple, very much like a lot of neckband earphones. They have a neckband which also can be twisted inwards and therefore be easier to for portability or to pop into the case if you so wish. The neckband itself is made out of a silicone rubbery material, which makes it easy to clean, and it is also in all black, so therefore if you have makeup or whatever like that, if you're going to be wearing them around the neck, then you're not going to have to worry about that. In terms of the earphones, where they come out from, you've got a little shorter cable, or should I say thinner cable and shorter cable, which goes out to the actual earbuds themselves, and then you've got these plastic parts which sit on either left or right side. Now on the left hand side, what you'll find is a set of controls. There is a left indicator kind of ingrained over here and kind of tapped in. Then you've got an on and off button, and you've got the Bluetooth button, and you've got volume up and down as well. The volume up and down button don't double up as previous to the next. Instead, you have to double tap or triple tap the on button or the play and pause button, and therefore you can cycle through music. Very easy controls, nothing to be overly concerned about. There's also a built-in mic. In terms of call quality there, it's decent. I didn't find it to be exceptionally great, but I didn't find it to be exceptionally bad either. It's kind of like that in between. There's also a charging point over here. As you can imagine, it's a USB-C port, which is great for providing extra battery life. Speaking of which, in terms of battery life, this is quoted to have 6 hours of runtime over the SBC codec only. So therefore, if you're using the higher resolution codecs, which I'll get into in just a bit, such as aptX HD or HWA, then you might find the battery life will be lower than that. And I did find that the battery life was pretty short in comparison to true wireless earbuds or neckband earphones. 6 hours isn't that great, and specifically for things which have pretty chunky plastic parts that sit on either side, I'd expect 8 to 10 hours as a minimum. So in terms of battery life, it's not the greatest. In terms of charge time, it takes 1.5 hours to charge as well. So therefore, you don't have a quick sort of burst charging either available over there. So it's a little bit disappointing in this respect, because when you're paying such a premium price, you'd expect pretty much every single thing to be included here. What is included is the fact that you can remove the cable. They use a 2-pin cable, very much like the normal IE ATS or even the IE ATs, and therefore you can use a wired cable. Now, yet again over here, it's a little bit of a shame, because in comparison to, let's say, the RHA T20 Wireless, where you get wireless, like this sort of wireless neckband design, and you've got 2 sets, not even one, but 2 sets of wired cables included in the box, Sennheiser doesn't include a single wired cable in the box. You'll have to buy that as an additional extra, which quite frankly at this price is ridiculous. I would expect a cable to be included. It really wouldn't have cost Sennheiser that much money. Now, speaking about the cables, I do like there's a right and left indicator that's really clear and obvious. You can see this red sort of tag. However, it doesn't look the most, I don't know, aesthetically pleasing when it's in the ears. The red sort of look over here does stand out, and you can kind of tell it. I just wish Sennheiser had done a little bit of a better job over here, potentially including this little red thing towards the neckband instead. of putting it straight where the earphones are. Nevertheless, that's Sennheiser's design. Then another thing I would like to mention is the over-the-ear hooks. Unfortunately, they are just built in. You can't take them out, and so therefore if you're like me and you wear glasses, I know I was wearing contact lenses before, but if you wear glasses, what you'll find is these will be uncomfortable because they're pretty chunky, pretty thick, and therefore not suited for wearing glasses. So now with that aside, let's talk about the actual bass tuning filter. Now the bass tuning filter is exactly the same as the IE80, the IE8 as well back in the day. There's a little dial over here which allows you to adjust it. Right now it's on the most minimal dial. If I were to dial it all the way up, that's on the maximum. So the maximum is pretty much always where the connector is over here. And it's just personal preference in terms of where you want to adjust it to and what you like to have it on. Now you might be wondering, why did I have it on the minus setting? Well, I'll get to that in just a bit in the sound quality section, because I think it's quite important to cover that, specifically because it is an actual feature of the earphones and things that a lot of Sennheiser devotees actually really love in terms of having that. But before I do move on to that, I want to talk about the Bluetooth connectivity and how it actually operates. Now in terms of Bluetooth connectivity, I have two phones. So I've got the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus and I've got the Honor View 20. Now the reason I'm mentioning of these two phones is simply because of the codec they use. The S10 Plus used aptX, so I had aptX HD being operated over the Sennheisers, whilst the Honor View 20 was maximizing on terms of codec quality, and I was able to use it on the HWA codec. Therefore, I was able to get better sound quality via my Honor View 20 than I was able to do on the S10 Plus. Before going ahead and purchasing these, if you're interested and you've been watching this video, do check with your phone manufacturer or look on the specs to see if they support that codec. I can't tell you if they do or don't. Just look on the website and see if the manufacturer supports it, or go on GSM Arena and see if your phone has all these different codecs. The reason why that's important is because really these earphones benefit from running at a higher quality codec. Unfortunately, they don't have the LDAC codec, which is one which is built into every Android device. Now, you will have to realize that some phones don't have the HWA codec, which pretty much HWA codec, which basically runs pretty much identically to LDAC. Therefore, you might be limited, when I say limited, specifically for audio files, to the aptX or aptX HD codec. Codecs aside, in terms of Bluetooth connectivity, I had absolutely no problems using these at a very far distance from my phone, through walls about 15 to 20 meters, which is extremely impressive for any Bluetooth device. I also didn't notice any latency issues when I was watching video on YouTube, for example, which is notoriously known for having problems. And iOS users will be pleased to know that these have AAC codec as well, so therefore you're not going to have those latency issues that you might experience if you're using, let's say, an SBC or aptX only device. This has AAC built in as well. So now, just before moving on to the sound quality section, I do want to mention that Sennheiser have an app that I installed on the Android devices. It's a pretty simple app. It's called the Smart Control app. You've got a 5-band or so equalizer, and then within there you can also see the device. It's pretty simple. It's not needed whatsoever. In all honesty, if you're an audiophile, you're probably going to have your own app, let's say like Power Amp, and you're going to be using a multi-band equalizer if you so wish. So I wouldn't even install the app unless you have real problems pairing it for some reason. So now let's go on to the sound quality, the most important part. Now, I want to first talk about that bass tuning filter, the little tool that you get, and then the earphones, and you can adjust the bass quantity basically. What I mentioned there is the quantity rather than the quality. What I found is that when I tuned the bass up, no matter what sort of increment I went up to, it just ramped up by a few decibels, very small amount. It takes a lot of listening to hear out the differences between the max mode and the minimum mode. There are differences, of course. If you're an audiophile, you're going to hear the differences, but it does take a little while for your head to kind of get adjusted to the extra amount of bass that's there. However, what you will notice almost straight away is the mid-range is kind of subdued, it's pushed back, and therefore the bass takes control. I was disappointed in this respect, and it was the same case when I had the IE8 back in the day. I mean, we're talking pretty much over around 10 years ago. The IE8s had the same sort of thing. When you ramped up the bass, yes, it added the extra amount of quantity of bass, didn't add any extra quality of bass, and unfortunately it took away around the lower mids were pretty much impacted by that sheer amount of bass that you've got now in a sort of frequency range. So in terms of the bass control, I actually did most of my listing on the absolute minimal quantity. I put it to the complete 0, and I found that the mid-range had more space to come out and more space to breathe, and therefore produced a much better sound when it came to listening to vocals. Even on, let's say, YG tracks, which are very bass orientated, very bass, heavy, even then those tracks which are not really focused on the vocals, on the maximum bass or the medium bass setting, I found that the vocals didn't come through as well on the IE80SBT. So therefore my suggestion would be using a minimum level, but your mileage may vary. Use it on whichever section you want, but that's what I am basing my assessment on, is on the minimal bass level. So with that rambling on, let's talk about the actual sound frequencies. So first off, the sub-bass frequency. What I was really impressed with the IE80 and the IE80S and the IE80SBT is the fact that they deliver a fantastic sub-bass extension. It does cut off, you can hear a little bit of a cut off. It isn't as impressive as some truly wired audiophile earphones out there, specifically if you pair them with a really nice DAC. However, it does extend really well, and it does give you that sort of low-end rumble that you really love to hear, which most Bluetooth earphones, I would say maybe all Bluetooth earphones I've come across, including the T20 Wireless, which are around £200 from RHA, those ones I still think that they don't rumble as deep and as well as these Sennheisers. Moving on to the mid-bass, here, again, depending on your bass level setting, as I said, I used it on the minimum bass setting, I felt that it still had a massive presence. So even on the lowest quality setting, I still had a massive amount of bass in my face, which isn't a bad thing because I quite like bass, and the music I listen to, let's say hip-hop and R&B, is very much bass orientated, so I didn't really mind that. However, I did feel that you are going to be sacrificing a bit of that mid-range because of that very large bass presence, and again, that is on the minimum bass level setting, let alone the highest level setting. So in terms of the mid-bass, I did feel it had a little bit of uncontrolled nature. It didn't feel as tight and as precise as I'd want it to be. Again, I'm being a bit critical here, but these are £430 earphones, so I have to be critical. In this case, I felt there was a little bit of control that was missing, but there was plenty of quantity. Moving on from that, let's talk about the mid-range. I did talk about this just now, but also about the bass tuning part, but the mid-range does take a hit in terms of the lower mids. It just doesn't sound as open and as forward sounding as I'd want it to do. In vocal tracks that I had, let's say Mariah Carey's, Alicia Keys, again this is my music taste, not yours, you could listen to whatever you want. Those vocal tracks didn't come out as well because of that really mid-bass frequency that kind of took over the mid-range. So the lower mids were impacted and therefore bleeded into the upper mids as well, and their vocals just didn't come out across as well as I wanted them to do. Moving on to the highs here, they really did extend very well. I didn't really feel too much of a roll off at the top end. There's plenty of sparkle at the top end, plenty of cleanness that you'd expect, and also no sibilance, which is something that if you've got sensitive ears and you've got earphones that are pretty sensitive, then you will find that can be uncomfortable. That's not the case with the IE80SBT. They really do extend very well at the top end. Moving on to the soundstage. Now the soundstage is something that I kind of hated on the IE8s and the IE7s even, but now I've kind of come to love and appreciate the IE80s S. The way that they've kind of portrayed the soundstage and instrument separation is really well done. It's not to the point that I feel that the music is way miles ahead, miles away from my ears. In fact, it feels quite close. It's kind of almost the opposite of my impressions I had with the IE8 and IE7s back in the day. So here, the soundstage does give a good amount of depth, and the instrument separation is done really well. You've got positional cues really well done. Like if you're playing a game like PUBG, for example, and you're playing on your mobile, you've got those positional cues. You get them really well and come through really well on the IE80S. However, the width in terms of what the soundstage is able to deliver feels a little bit closed, and it's something I never thought I would say about a Sennheiser IE8 or IE something product, but unfortunately that is the case with the IE80S. I felt that they lacked that little width. Comparing them to, let's say, the Hi-Fi Man RE800 or the 1200 Silvers, or comparing them to my customs, I felt that these just lacked that width and that sort of relaxed nature of being able to deliver a really wide, broad spectrum of sounds that comes from all different angles. So that was my major complaints of the earphones, aside from the mid-bass frequencies. But overall, in terms of sound quality, I mean, they are audiophile grade earphones. There's no ifs and buts about it. However, what I am saying to you right over here is being very critical, because these are very expensive. And when I compared them to earphones that cost about half the price and are wired, I found that those wired earphones delivered, let's say, in that instrument separation part and the width, for example, they delivered better sort of performance in those departments. So overall, what do I think about these earphones? And by the way, let me pop them on so you guys can actually see how they look like, so you can see how they are. So overall, what do I think about them? Well, I think these are really great sounding earphones. However, they're not good enough for me to recommend or actively recommend at that £430 price tag. I appreciate that prices fluctuate, and on Amazon, as the time of doing this review, can be found for around £320, at which point you must consider you've got these at £320, and the other earphones I've listened to are the RHA T20 Wireless, which offer a way more complete package and a different type of sound signature that's much better in terms of dealing with width and depth of soundstage, but isn't as good as producing that low-end rumble that you might come to love and expect from these Sennheiser earphones. So it's a little bit of a hit and miss. I like them in terms of their sound quality, I like them in terms of their features, in terms of their codec support. I dislike the fact that they've got a very short battery life. I dislike the fact that you don't get any extra cables included. And I also dislike the fact that that bass tuning filter really just adds more quantity of bass rather than adding that nice quality of bass while preserving that mid-range frequency. And in terms of the over-ear hooks as well, I feel that it was unnecessary to actually have them permanently added with over-the-ear hooks, which are pretty thick, versus providing the option of adding that sort of extra, which a lot of manufacturers do. So there we go. It's pros and cons on both sides. Not something I'd shout about, but not something I'd say absolutely avoid. If you've got the money and you want something that has a lot of bass, and you want something that's, you know, wireless and looks pretty nice and is really lightweight, then these earphones are great. But if you want some other suggestions, do check down in the description below, and you will see suggestions that I've put down from wired to wireless earphones that you might want to consider instead of these IE80S BT. So there we go, guys. I've been Totally Dubbed. This has been an independent, unbiased, unpaid review, as always, like all the things I do on my channel. If you like it, make sure you give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and favourite and share with your family and friends if you feel that this video will be helpful to them. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care, and bye-bye.